The ground trembles, not from an explosion, not from artillery, but from something deeper, slower, wrong. Drones slice through low clouds, their infrared eyes scanning ruined city blocks and scorched highways. Below them, armored convoys crawl through dust and smoke while distant thunder rolls across the horizon, indistinguishable from shellfire. This war zone never truly sleeps. Satellites watch, radars hum, sensors listen. Every inch of land, sea, and sky is measured, tracked, and categorized. That's why the anomaly doesn't make sense. In a dimly lit command bunker overlooking contested waters, seismic monitors flicker. A junior analyst leans closer to the screen, frowning as a waveform stretches wider than any he's seen. The vibration isn't sharp like an impact. It isn't chaotic like an earthquake. It's rhythmic, controlled. "Sir," he says quietly, almost hesitant to break the constant chatter of radio traffic. "We're getting deep ocean movement, way below the tectonic shelf." The officer on duty barely looks up. "Subduction shift?" "That's what I thought," the analyst replies. His fingers dance across the console, pulling comparative data. "But it's moving laterally." The screen pulses again, stronger. Far above the bunker, the sea reflects the slate-grey sky. Warships patrol the boundary line, their hulls cutting through choppy waves as radar dishes rotate endlessly. Sonar pings echo into the depths, bouncing off trenches no human eye has ever seen. Then the ocean answers back. A low-frequency resonance ripples through the water, subtle enough to evade most systems, but powerful enough to distort older sensors. Sonar operators exchange uneasy glances as their displays bloom with static. "Contact?" one asks. "Negative," another responds. "No, wait, I'm losing clarity. It's like the water's swallowing the signal." Back in the bunker, alarms chirp softly, not screaming yet, just enough to demand attention. The waveform spikes again, deeper, closer. "Magnitude's increasing," the analyst says, his voice tighter now. "If this is tectonic, it's not following any known fault line." The commanding officer finally stands, walking over. He stares at the data, jaw set. "Run it against historical records." The analyst does. The system searches decades of archived anomalies, secret files, redacted events. Nothing matches. Outside, rain begins to fall, streaking across ruined concrete and the shattered windows of abandoned buildings. Soldiers pause mid-patrol as they feel it, a faint vibration under their boots. Not enough to knock them off balance, just enough to notice. One of them crouches, presses a gloved hand to the ground. "You feel that?" "Probably shelling," another mutters, though there's no artillery schedule. No incoming alerts. The vibration fades, then returns, stronger. In the ocean, a pod of whales abruptly changes course, breaching in panic before diving hard into the depths. Schools of fish scatter in all directions. Even the water itself seems to recoil. Surface ripples spreading outward in perfect circles. Sonar lights up again. This time, there is a shape. Not clear, not defined. Just mass. Immense mass, registering at a scale that forces the system to recalibrate twice before accepting the data. "That's impossible," the operator whispers. The contact isn't fast, it isn't erratic. It's moving with purpose, displacing millions of tons of water as it shifts beneath the seabed. In the bunker, the waveform peaks higher than before, consoles flicker. The ceiling light shudders, dust drifting down. "Sir," the analyst says, swallowing hard, "this isn't natural." The officer's expression darkens. He reaches for a secure phone. "Get Naval Command on the line now." The vibration rolls through the coastline, subtle but undeniable. Buildings creak, Loose debris rattles. Somewhere in the distance, a watchtower alarm chirps as its stabilization system compensates for ground movement that shouldn't exist. The ocean surface bulges just slightly, then settles. Silence follows. Not the normal quiet of a battlefield lull, but something heavier, expectant. Sensors continue to read the movement far below, the signature growing clearer, more defined, as if whatever lies beneath is rising through layers of pressure and darkness, untouched for centuries. The analyst stares at the screen, breath shallow. Depth reading just changed, he says. How much, the officer asks. The analyst doesn't answer right away. He zooms in, confirms the numbers. It's ascending. Outside, the rain intensifies, drumming against steel and concrete. Waves begin to swell without wind to drive them. Warships adjust their headings instinctively. Crews uneasy, though no alarms have been officially sounded. Deep below the surface, something ancient shifts its weight. The seismic readings don't fade. They grow stronger, closer, deliberate. The first satellite goes blind for less than a second. That's all it takes. A secure operations room halfway across the world flickers as feeds stutter, star maps glitching into static before snapping back. Technicians exchange confused looks, fingers already flying across keyboards. Did you see that? One asked. Before anyone can answer, a second satellite reports interference, then a third, not failure, disruption. As if something just brushed against the invisible threads holding the planet's eyes in place. In the war zone, radar towers sweep the horizon beneath a bruised sky. Their signals bounce outward, clean and sharp, until a low-frequency distortion bleeds into every channel at once. Operators adjust filters, boost power, recalibrate. Nothing fixes it. The distortion isn't loud. It's precise. Under the ocean, a pulse ripples outward, bending electromagnetic fields as it travels. Fiber optic cables hum, their data streams stuttering as if the sea itself is breathing through them. Sonar arrays pick up the echo of the pulse and then lose it, the signal slipping between known spectrums. In a fortified intelligence complex far from the battlefield, a conference table fills with men and women who don't usually share rooms. Flags stand behind them, unacknowledged. Screens line the walls, each displaying different data: seismic readings, satellite telemetry, oceanic interference. None of it aligns. A senior analyst removes her glasses, rubbing her eyes as she studies overlapping graphs. This isn't jamming, she says. It's not cyber, not kinetic. It's environmental. Across the table, a military advisor leans forward. Environmental doesn't knock out orbital systems. Another voice cuts in colder. Unless the environment is the source. A map of the contested waters expands across the central screen. Concentric ripples radiate outward from a single point beneath the sea. Each ripple corresponds to a brief electromagnetic anomaly, milliseconds long but growing in intensity. Those pulses, the analyst continues, pointing, they're not random, they're periodic. How periodic, someone asks. She taps a key, a metronomic pattern appears, slow, powerful, like a heartbeat. Back in the war zone, night has fallen. Floodlights cast harsh white beams over concrete barriers and ruined buildings. Soldiers man checkpoints, uneasy for reasons they can't quite name. Radios crackle with interference, voices warping, cutting out mid-sentence. Say again, a sergeant snaps into his mic. Static answers him. Nearby, a drone drops from the sky without warning, its rotors seizing as its systems overload. It slams into the ground, sparks dancing briefly before dying. What the hell is happening? Someone mutters. Offshore, a destroyer's bridge is bathed in red emergency lighting as navigation systems glitch. The captain grips the railing, eyes locked on the sea. "Report," he orders. "Magnetic interference spiked, sir," an officer replies. "We lost GPS lock for 3 seconds. Never seen anything like it." The sea below them churns subtly, waves crossing against the wind. Another pulse passes through the hull, not a shock wave, but a pressure that makes the metal sing. Deep beneath the surface, the source shifts again. In the intelligence complex, the room has gone quiet. A new feed fills one of the screens, an underwater cable hub blinking offline, then another, cascading failures spreading like a neural network shorting out. "That's global infrastructure," someone says. "Those cables carry civilian traffic." The analyst nods slowly. "And military, financial, emergency systems." A general folds his arms, tension visible in the rigid set of his shoulders. "Is this a weapon?" The answer doesn't come immediately. They cross-reference classified weapons tests, experimental platforms, rumored super projects. Nothing matches the signature. The pulses aren't destructive in the conventional sense. They don't fry circuits. They confuse them, slip between safeguards. Finally, the analyst speaks, her voice steady but tight. "No known weapon behaves like this." "Then what is it?" the general presses. She hesitates just a fraction of a second. "It's not natural either." Silence lands heavy in the room. Another pulse hits, stronger than the last. Screens ripple, data jumps, the epicenter marker inches closer to the surface. In the war zone, the ground vibrates faintly once more. Soldiers look at each other, unease turning to fear. Offshore, sonar briefly catches an impossibly large return before the signal collapses into noise. In the intelligence room, a final overlay appears on the main screen. Seismic movements synchronized perfectly with the electromagnetic pulses. 2 separate systems. 1 source. The analyst exhales slowly. "Whatever this is," she says, "it's interacting with the planet itself." The general straightens. "Alert all commands, this isn't an isolated anomaly." As if in response, the lights dim for a heartbeat, and every screen in the room flickers at once. The signal beneath the ocean intensifies, focused, intentional, broadcasting a presence that defies classification. It matches no known weapon and no known natural phenomenon. The fleet is already moving when the order comes through. Grey hulls cut across black water, their wakes glowing faintly under moonlight, filtered through storm clouds. Destroyers lead the formation, followed by cruisers, and a carrier hanging back like a loaded fist. Deck lights are dimmed, radar spins at full power. Every ship runs silent protocols, weapons armed but locked. They're crossing the red line. On the bridge of the lead destroyer, the captain watches the digital boundary slide beneath the ship's icon. Hostile waters, contested territory, the kind of place where one mistake can start a war. "Rules of engagement are unchanged," an officer says. "No firing unless fired upon. We observe only." The captain nods, though his eyes never leave the ocean ahead. Let's hope whatever we're chasing understands that. Below deck, the sonar room hums with tension. Screens glow blue and green, waves of sound rolling outward into the depths. Operators sit rigid in their chairs, headsets pressed tight, listening to the ocean's reply. "Ping out," one calls. A beat passes, then another. Static washes over the channel, low and thick, like the sea exhaling. "Contact?" the captain asks over comms. "Negative." "Wait," the sonar chief says, leaning forward. His screen flickers, data reorganizing itself automatically. "I'm getting a return. Bearing 085. Depth." Jesus. "What is it?" someone asks. The sonar chief doesn't answer immediately, and he adjusts gain, recalibrates frequency. The return sharpens, not into clarity, but into scale. It's too big, he says quietly. On the bridge, the air shifts. Define too big, the captain replies. The sonar chief swallows. Sir, the system's trying to classify it as a geological feature. Seamount, trench wall, but it's moving. The screen expands as automated protocols kick in, trying to assign parameters. Numbers climb, mass estimates spike, red warning brackets flashing as the software rejects its own calculations. Classification failure, an operator mutters. It's breaking the scale. Outside, the sea begins to change. Waves roll against each other at odd angles, slapping against hulls with growing force. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of ozone and salt. Another destroyer reports in. We're detecting the same contact. Our sonar just went non-linear. Non-linear how? The captain asks. Like the ocean folded around something, comes the reply. Like it doesn't want us to see it. On the sonar display, the return shifts again. The shape elongates, then compresses, resolving into a silhouette that no one in the room wants to name. That's not terrain, the sonar chief says. His voice is steady, but his eyes are wide. Terrain doesn't do that. The captain grips the edge of the console. Distance? Closing, the chief answers. Slow, very slow. In the water beneath the fleet, pressure builds as something massive displaces the depths around it. Sediment lifts in thick clouds, swallowed by darkness. The pulse from earlier is gone now, replaced by presence. A new alarm chirps, hull stress indicators flicker as the water around the ships begins to rise and fall without pattern. Sir, an officer says, trying to keep his voice even, we're experiencing vertical displacement. The sea level's fluctuating. As if responding to the words, a swell rolls through the formation, lifting thousands of tons of steel in unison before dropping them back down. Metal groans. Somewhere below deck, a pipe bursts. Hold formation, the captain orders. All ships maintain spacing. The sonar chief's screen flashes again, this time with a warning he's never seen before. Depth reading changing, he says. Rapid ascent. On the bridge, the captain steps closer to the viewport. Rain lashes against the glass. Lightning flickers in the distance, briefly illuminating the ocean ahead. The surface bulges. Not a wave, not a current. A displacement, wide as a city block, pushing upward from below. Sonar confirms, the chief says, his voice barely above a whisper. The object is rising. The sea begins to boil, bubbles the size of vehicles bursting to the surface. Water churns violently, the sound deep and thunderous, felt more than heard. Sir, an officer says, fear finally breaking through discipline. If that thing breaches... The captain doesn't answer. He's staring straight ahead, at the impossible swell growing larger by the second. Lightning strikes again. For an instant, something vast moves beneath the surface, an outline unmistakably organic, shifting with muscle and intent rather than current. The sonar screen redraws itself one last time. The return now has structure, massive, vertical, alive. The system abandons classification entirely. And as the ocean continues to rise, as the fleet holds its breath at the edge of the unknown, one truth settles over every ship in the task force. Whatever is coming up to meet them is not a machine. It is not a weapon. And it is not asleep anymore. The ocean detonates. Not outward, but upward. An eruption of black water and white foam, as if the sea itself has been torn open from below. Waves the size of buildings slam into the fleet, tossing destroyers like toys and forcing alarms to scream across every deck at once. Brace! Brace! Echoes over comms, barely audible beneath the roar. Then something rises. At first it's just mass, an impossible column forcing its way out of the depths, displacing millions of tons of water in seconds. The sea drains off it in waterfalls as the shape grows clearer, larger, towering higher than radar masts and flight decks. Godzilla breaks the surface. His head emerges first, scarred and ancient, eyes opening slowly, as if the world itself has disturbed his sleep. Water pours from jagged dorsal plates that glow faintly beneath stormlight, each ridge taller than a skyscraper. His shoulders follow, then his massive torso, pushing the ocean aside with lazy, unstoppable force. On the bridge of the carrier, silence falls. Every screen fills with him. Every camera struggles to frame him. Scale becomes meaningless. That's not possible, someone whispers. Godzilla exhales and the sound alone ripples across the fleet. An ancient, thunderous breath that vibrates through hulls and bones alike. The sea continues to churn around his legs as he straightens, dwarfing the carrier he now stands beside. He does not roar yet. He simply exists. The fleet recoils instinctively, engines flaring, as ships struggle to create distance that suddenly feels laughably small. Weapons systems come online automatically. "Sir," a weapons officer says, voice shaking despite training, "targeting solutions are unstable. There's no lock." He's too close, too big. The captain stares at the Titan through the bridge viewport, rain streaking down the glass like tears. "We can't just sit here." A pause. Then the order no one wants to give. "Authorize warning fire." Missile hatches snap open across multiple ships. Guns elevate. The night flashes as flares and shells streak toward Godzilla, bursting against his chest and shoulders in fire and smoke. The impacts register. They just don't matter. Godzilla barely reacts. Explosions bloom against his hide and vanish. Sparks against stone. He tilts his head slightly, not in pain, but irritation, like a storm cloud acknowledging a gust of wind. A second volley follows. He flinches this time, a slow, deliberate movement, as rounds strike along his neck. The water around him boils from the concussive force. Then he moves. Godzilla shifts his weight and the sea responds violently. A shockwave rolls outward as his foot settles, capsizing smaller vessels and sending crews scrambling across tilting decks. He lets out a low rumbling sound, not a roar, but something closer to a growl, ancient and displeased. "Cease fire!" the captain shouts, realization crashing in. "All ships, cease fire!" Too late. A final missile detonates near Godzilla's shoulder. The Titan's eyes narrow. Slowly, deliberately, he turns his head toward the fleet. Every weapon goes silent. Godzilla roars. The sound rips through the sky, a deep, primal bellow that shakes clouds and fractures eardrums. Windows shatter, radar screens flicker. The roar carries not rage, but dominance. A declaration older than humanity. Crew members freeze where they stand, some dropping to their knees as the sound passes through them like a physical force. Then, just as suddenly, Godzilla stops. He looks past the ships, past the carrier, toward the coastline. His head turns, massive neck muscles flexing, as his gaze fixes on the distant glow of the war zone. Burning cities, active battlefields, the faint electromagnetic scars still bleeding through the air. Godzilla's dorsal plates pulse faintly, responding to something unseen. His posture shifts, attention captured not by the fleet that attacked him, but by the land beyond it. He's not engaging us," an officer whispers. The captain watches in stunned silence as Godzilla takes a step, not toward the ships, but away from them. Each movement sends tidal waves crashing against hulls, but his focus is elsewhere now. Towards the shore. Towards the heart of human conflict. Godzilla wades forward, the ocean retreating before him as he advances, water cascading off his frame like a receding tide. Warships scramble to clear his path, powerless to stop or slow him. No weapon fires. No order comes. As Godzilla reaches shallower water, his silhouette looms against the burning horizon, a living mountain moving with terrifying intent. And in that moment, every human watching understands the truth. They were never the target. Godzilla has awakened, and he is walking inland. The first soldier to see him forgets how to breathe. Gunfire cracks across the coastal outskirts, tracer rounds stitching through smoke-choked air as two armored units clash in the ruins of a port city. Drones buzz overhead, orders are shouted, explosions walk down shattered streets. Then the horizon changes. A shadow rises beyond the burning skyline, vast, impossible, moving when no mountain should move. At first it's mistaken for smoke, then a hill, then something that blocks the clouds themselves. Hold fire, someone says, not over comms, out loud, instinctive. The words spread without command. The battlefield falls quiet. Soldiers emerge from cover, weapons lowering inch by inch as they stare towards the coast. Godzilla's silhouette dominates the distance, his massive form wading out of the sea and onto land, every step cracking concrete and sending shockwaves through already ruined streets. Fires gutter and die as displaced air rushes outward, buildings collapse without being touched. A tank crew freezes mid-advance, the engine still growling beneath them. The gunner looks up through the hatch, eyes wide. That's not real. Godzilla moves inland with slow, deliberate steps. He does not charge, he does not hunt. He advances like gravity, inevitable, indifferent. The ground shakes again. Soldiers feel it through their boots, through their ribs. Some drop to their knees, others stand frozen, rifles dangling uselessly in their hands. Across the war zone, radios erupt with overlapping voices. Command, do you see that? Is that a hostile asset? Who authorized this? Static answers half the calls. The rest are drowned out by panic. In a forward command post carved into the shell of a collapsed office tower, officers crowd around flickering monitors. Live feeds show Godzilla from every angle, satellites, drones, helmet cams, all failing to capture his full scale. No doctrine covers this, an operations chief snaps, slamming a fist onto the table. He's bigger than our engagement zones, bigger than our kill grids. A younger officer stares at the screen, jaw slack. Sir, he's walking straight through both sides' positions. As if to prove the point, Godzilla's foot comes down across a divided front line. Trenches vanish. Armor is tossed aside like debris. The shockwave alone sends soldiers flying, though Godzilla never looks down. He doesn't distinguish uniforms. He doesn't acknowledge borders. On the ground, a squad huddles behind a shattered wall as dust rains down around them. One soldier presses his back against the concrete, eyes squeezed shut. Say something, he whispers into his mic. Anyone. Nothing comes back. Another soldier peeks around the corner, watching Godzilla pass between collapsed buildings. Up close, the Titan is worse. Skin scarred like ancient stone, eyes glowing faintly with internal fire. Heat rolls off him in waves, warping the air. He's not attacking us, the soldier murmurs. He's just going. Godzilla's tail swings, clipping a radio tower and sending it crashing into the street. Sparks flare briefly, then darkness. Entire communication sectors go dead. Command structures begin to fracture. Regional HQ issues evacuation orders that contradict Central Command. Air support requests are denied, then approved, then denied again. Pilots circle helplessly, afraid to engage, afraid to retreat. A general barks into a secure line, voice tight. "I need options." "There are none," comes the reply after a pause. "Not against something like that." Godzilla pauses briefly at the edge of the city. For a heartbeat, the war zone holds its breath. Then he lifts his head. His gaze sweeps across the land, not the ruined streets, not the scattered soldiers, but deeper, farther inland. His dorsal plates pulse faintly, responding to something unseen, unheard by human senses. Sensors buried across the region light up in response. Power grids spike. Old bunkers hum to life as if called by his presence. In the command post, a technician stiffens. "Sir, overlaying his trajectory now." A digital map fills the screen. Godzilla's projected path draws itself forward in red, cutting clean through contested territory, ignoring cities and battle lines alike. The room goes silent, because the line doesn't wander. It doesn't deviate. It points straight toward the most heavily fortified region on Earth. Layered defenses, hardened bunkers, concentrated firepower built for wars between nations, not gods. The operations chief exhales slowly. He's not lost. Outside, Godzilla resumes his march. Each step pulls him farther from the sea and deeper into human territory. Fires flicker in his wake. The ground continues to tremble. The war has stopped, not because peace was declared, but because every weapon on the battlefield has just realized how small it truly is. The sky fills with fire before the first warning reaches the ground. Missile silos buried beneath mountains yawn open, concrete lids shearing away as engines ignite in blinding white columns. Offshore platforms pivot. Mobile launchers rise from camouflage nets. In the air, stealth bombers glide into position, their bellies heavy with weapons never meant to be seen. This is no battlefield response. This is a declaration. In underground command chambers, hands hover over keys for a fraction of a second longer than protocol allows. Faces reflect the same thought. If this fails, nothing else matters. Launch. The night fractures. Hypersonic missiles tear across the sky, contrails carving glowing scars through cloud cover. Precision-guided warheads descend in perfectly synchronized arcs, targeting Godzilla's projected path with merciless accuracy. Experimental platforms, classified, theoretical, whispered about only in secure rooms, activate for the first time outside simulations. Energy cannons hum, discharging focused beams that distort the air itself. On the ground, soldiers watch the sky in awe and terror as the weapons pass overhead. "Is that all for him?" someone breathes. Godzilla continues forward as if unaware, massive feet crushing highways into powder. He does not look up until the first impacts land. The earth erupts. Explosions walk across his chest and shoulders in a blinding chain reaction. Shockwaves flattening everything within kilometers. The air turns white-hot. Firestorms bloom, consuming ruined buildings and empty streets alike. A wall of sound slams outward, shattering what little glass still clings to the city. For a moment, just one, the Titan disappears inside the inferno. Command centers hold their breath. Sensors scream as temperatures spike beyond expected limits. Seismic monitors jump violently, then stabilize. Then the fire clears. Godzilla is still standing. Smoke rolls off his body in thick black sheets. His hide is scorched, cracked in places, but unbroken. He shifts his shoulders, rolling the impacts off like irritation rather than injury. A second wave hits. Bunker-buster warheads slam into the ground around him, detonating deep, collapsing the earth beneath his feet. For an instant, Godzilla sinks, then pushes back up, muscles flexing as he tears free of collapsing rock. A beam weapon lances across his torso, bathing him in blue-white light. The air screams as energy pours into him. Godzilla roars. This time, it's different. The sound is no longer a warning, it's pain and fury. The roar rolls across the war zone like a living thing, knocking soldiers flat, rattling armor, overloading microphones. Some cover their ears, others scream without realizing it. "He's still moving," an operator shouts in disbelief. Godzilla turns his head toward the source of the attacks. His eyes burn brighter now, glowing with a deep, molten intensity. The calm, ancient indifference is gone. What remains is wrath. "Retarget! Focus fire!" a commander orders, voice cracking. "Bring everything down on him!" More missiles streak in. Drones swarm, releasing payloads in precise spirals. The sky becomes a web of contrails and falling fire. The impacts land. They still don't stop him. Godzilla plants his feet and straightens, towering higher, as if the assault has reminded him of his full height. He swings his tail once, obliterating a reinforced bunker in a spray of concrete and steel. The shockwave knocks aircraft off course. On a nearby ridge, a group of soldiers stare up at him, faces lit by distant flames. "We just made him angry," one whispers. Godzilla takes a step forward and the ground collapses beneath the pressure. Shockwaves ripple outward, triggering secondary explosions from buried munitions and fuel depots. Fires blossom uncontrolled. In command, the realization hits like ice water. "It's not working," someone says softly. "No," another replies, eyes locked on the feed. "It's feeding him." Thermal readings spike again, not from the weapons, but from inside Godzilla himself. Heat builds beneath his skin, tracing faint lines along his massive frame. Godzilla lifts his head and roars once more, longer this time. The sound reverberates through bone and steel alike. Then the glow begins. Starting at the base of his spine, his dorsal plates ignite one by one, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Each jagged fin brightens in sequence, like a charging weapon older than civilization. The battlefield goes deathly still. Soldiers forget to run. Pilots forget to breathe. Commanders forget to speak. Because every sensor, every camera, every terrified human watching understands the same thing at the same time. The weapons meant to kill gods have failed. And now something far worse is about to answer. The glow reaches Godzilla's throat. It starts as a dull internal burn, light bleeding through scars, veins igniting beneath ancient skin. Soldiers watching from the ruins feel it before they see it. A sudden pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes directly overhead. "Move!" someone screams. "Get down! Get away!" Too late. Godzilla plants his feet, chest expanding as if drawing breath from the planet itself. The blue light surges upward, flooding his neck, his jaws parting just enough for the glow to spill out between serrated teeth. For a split second, the battlefield exists in perfect, horrible clarity. Tanks frozen mid-advance. Missile batteries tracking targets that no longer matter. Jets banking low, pilots staring in disbelief at the living mountain beneath them. Then Godzilla exhales. A column of atomic fire erupts from his mouth, pure concentrated energy, blindingly blue-white, screaming across the battlefield in a straight, merciless line. The beam doesn't explode. It erases. Armor dissolves instantly, steel vaporizing before crews can react. The ground itself peels away, molten earth spraying skyward as the beam carves a glowing trench through bunkers, vehicles and fortifications, designed to survive nuclear war. Aircraft caught in its path vanish mid-air, their silhouettes flashing once before disintegrating into ash and fragments that never hit the ground. Shock waves ripple outward, flattening everything not already consumed. Soldiers miles away are thrown off their feet by the heat alone. Skin burns through protective gear, radios die in a chorus of static and screams. The beam sweeps. Godzilla turns his head slowly, deliberately, walking the atomic breath across the front line. Entire formations cease to exist in seconds. Firestorms bloom behind the beam's path, rising into the night like artificial suns. In a forward command post, the world goes white. Monitors overload, feeds cutting out one by one as cameras are obliterated. A blast door buckles inward, alarms screaming as power fails. Front line is gone, a shaken officer whispers, staring at a map that no longer updates. It's just gone. Godzilla cuts the beam. Silence follows, not the quiet of survival, but the ringing absence left when sound itself has been burned away. The battlefield smoulders, a vast scar glowing red-hot beneath drifting ash. Where thousands of soldiers once stood, there is nothing but fire and ruin. Godzilla exhales again, steam pouring from his jaws. The blue glow fades slowly from his dorsal plates, leaving embers of light pulsing beneath his skin. He does not pursue. He does not finish the kill. He simply stands there, towering over devastation so complete it no longer resembles war. High above the clouds, satellites adjust their orbits automatically as sensors spike beyond emergency thresholds. Heat blooms register from space, unmistakable in scale and shape. In distant capitals, alarms echo through halls of power. Screens flicker to life in secure rooms where leaders gather in silence, watching grainy footage stabilize just long enough to show the aftermath. A glowing trench kilometers long, the front line erased with surgical precision. This wasn't indiscriminate, one advisor says quietly. Another nods, fingers steepled. He targeted the concentration of force. A third voice cuts through the room, colder. He demonstrated capability. The footage rewinds. Analysts overlay data, trajectory, duration, yield. The numbers don't align with known weapons. They never could. That wasn't rage, a scientist murmurs. That was restraint. Back in the ruins, survivors crawl from cover, coughing through ash-choked air. One soldier stares at the horizon, where the beam carved the land open, eyes hollow. He could have kept going, he says to no one. He could have wiped everything out. Godzilla begins to move again. Slow, heavy, purposeful. He steps past the edge of the devastation without looking back, leaving the destroyed front behind him like a message burned into the earth itself. Fires rage unchecked, but no one is shooting anymore. No one even raises a weapon. Across the globe, the realization settles in with terrifying clarity. This wasn't collateral damage. This wasn't a battle. It was a warning. And Godzilla has made himself perfectly understood. The doors were never meant to open this wide. Deep beneath a mountain far from the war zone, seals disengage with a hollow metallic echo. White lights flicker on, revealing a chamber layered with screens, analog instruments, and walls lined with redacted insignias older than the conflict raging above ground. Monarch has stepped out of the shadows. A senior analyst stares at a live satellite feed showing the glowing scar Godzilla carved across the battlefield. Her hands are steady, but her eyes betray something close to dread. He's not advancing randomly, she says. Pause the feed. The image freezes. A second overlay appears, Godzilla's movement path traced across the region in cold blue lines. The path doesn't zigzag, it doesn't react to troop movement or firepower. It points. A Monarch field director leans forward, tapping the screen. That trajectory matches 3 separate historical incidents. A military liaison scoffs. You're saying this thing has a pattern? Yes, the director replies calmly. A response pattern. Across the room, an older scientist, grey hair pulled back, eyes sharp despite exhaustion, activates another display. Grainy footage fills the wall. Declassified recordings of massive shapes moving beneath oceans, seismic anomalies predating modern warfare, ancient cave paintings depicting titanic figures locked in combat. Godzilla is not a weapon, she says. He's a regulator. Silence. Above ground, in a temporary command bunker closer to the devastation, generals argue in overlapping voices. Air still smells like ash. The glow on the horizon hasn't faded. We need authorization for nuclear escalation, one demands. Another slams a fist onto the table. Against that, we just saw what happened. The argument dies when a secure channel opens on its own. The screen shifts. The Monarch insignia appears. This channel is classified at a level above your clearance, a calm voice says, but circumstances have changed. Faces harden. No one interrupts. Godzilla is not attacking humanity, the voice continues. He's responding to a provocation. A general leans in, incredulous. Our entire front line was erased. Yes, Monarch replies, because it was in his way. The feed switches to layered data. Electromagnetic anomalies, seismic pulses, energy signatures buried deep beneath the war zone. The patterns match those detected before Godzilla surfaced. This, the Monarch scientist says, stepping into frame now, is what woke him. The image zooms in on a subterranean structure hidden beneath reinforced terrain. The readings spike unnaturally, power levels climbing far beyond conventional reactors. That installation doesn't exist, a defense official snaps. Monarch doesn't blink. It wasn't supposed to. On the battlefield's edge, Godzilla pauses again. Steam rises from his body as rain begins to fall, hissing against scorched earth. His eyes narrow, focusing not on the soldiers retreating in terror, but on the land itself. Deep underground, something hums. In the Monarch facility, the older scientist exhales slowly. We've seen this before. Every time humanity digs too deep, builds something too loud, too powerful, Titans respond. A younger analyst pulls up another overlay, ancient maps aligned with modern infrastructure. The convergence point flashes red. The war zone sits on top of something older, he says, a convergence site. We believe the energy output from that buried project mimics Titan biosignatures. A general's voice cracks. You're saying we rang a dinner bell? No, Monarch replies. You rang a challenge. Back near the ruins, soldiers watch Godzilla stand motionless, rain cascading off his massive frame. He does not attack. He waits. He's listening, a Monarch field observer murmurs into her recorder, like he's confirming the signal. In the command bunker, the room has gone deathly quiet. If you're right, a leader finally says, then stopping him means shutting that thing down. Yes, Monarch answers, but understand this, Godzilla is not the aggressor here, he's the consequence. Another display activates, showing Godzilla's dorsal plates faintly pulsing again, not fully charged, but alive with contained power. He won't stop, the scientist adds, not until the source is gone. The general looks back at the ruined battlefield feed, the erased front line, the molten trench, the scale of destruction achieved with terrifying precision. So we're not fighting a monster, he says slowly. Monarch's symbol glows softly on the screen. No, comes the reply. You're standing between him and something far worse. Far below the earth, beneath steel and concrete and classified lies, the hidden signal intensifies. Godzilla takes another step forward. And for the first time, humanity begins to understand the truth. The real threat isn't the Titan walking toward them. It's what they woke up beneath his feet. The truth is buried deeper than the bunkers. Elevators descend past reinforced blast doors, past layers of concrete poured over decades, past warning labels stripped of names and replaced with codes. The deeper the descent, the quieter it becomes, until even the distant thunder of war feels like a memory. The doors open onto a cavernous chamber glowing with artificial light. At its center stands the project. A lattice of angular metal and superconductor rings surrounds a core that pulses like a captured star. Energy crawls along its surface in violent arcs, restrained only by humming containment fields. The air vibrates. Every monitor in the room struggles to keep up with the output climbing in real time. This exceeds nuclear yield thresholds, a Monarch engineer says, voice tight as she studies the data, by a factor of... Don't finish that sentence, a military overseer snaps. Above ground, Godzilla slows. His massive head tilts slightly, eyes narrowing as the signal sharpens. The faint glow along his dorsal plates intensifies, not in anger, but recognition. This is no longer background noise. This is prey. Back underground, technicians scramble between consoles as alarms flare amber. Sweat beads on faces lit by flashing readouts. Power surge detected, one calls out. The core's stabilizing into a feedback loop. That's impossible, another replies. It's not even fully online. A Monarch field commander steps forward, jaw clenched. That's because it was never meant to be. She turns to the assembled officers. This project was hidden for a reason. It's not a deterrent. It's a beacon. The senior general bristles. We built it to end the war. You built it to win one, Monarch fires back, and instead you rang the dinner bell for something that's been alive longer than civilization. On a massive screen, Godzilla's path updates again. The red line bends, not randomly, not destructively, but directly toward the subterranean chamber's coordinates. He's locked on, a technician whispers. In the chamber, the core brightens. The hum deepens into a throbbing vibration felt in the bones. Loose tools skitter across metal floors. Containment integrity at 92%, someone reports. 91, none. Shut it down, the Monarch commander orders. Now. A pause. The overseer's hand hovers over the console, eyes flicking between the data and the officers behind him. If we shut it down, we lose it. You lose it either way, Monarch says. The difference is whether we're still alive afterward. Above them, the earth trembles as Godzilla takes another step. The vibration rolls through bedrock, rattling ceiling panels. Dust drifts down like ash. Seismic activity spiking, a technician calls. He's getting closer. The overseer exhales slowly. Prepare activation sequence. Monarch spins toward him. You were ordered not to power it up. If that thing reaches us, he snaps, this is the only weapon we have that might matter. That's not a weapon, Monarch says quietly. It's bait. Sirens shift from amber to red. Activation sequence initiated, an automated voice announces. The core flares brighter, energy output surging past safety margins. Containment fields strain, their hum rising to a shriek. Every sensor in the facility screams at once. Miles away, Godzilla stops. His dorsal plates blaze brighter in response, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the underground core. The air around him crackles. He lowers his head, eyes locked forward. He feels it, a monarch observer murmurs over comms. It's calling to him. In the chamber, the floor shakes violently. A crack splits along one wall, concrete spider webbing outward. "Abort!" Monarch shouts. "Abort now!" The overseer slams his hand down. "Negative, bring it to full output." The core's light turns white hot. Energy readings spike beyond projected limits, rivaling the signature of a nuclear detonation. Without the explosion, the field barely holds. On the surface, Godzilla releases a low, resonant growl. Not rage. Anticipation. He begins to move faster now, each step more purposeful. Each impact shaking the ground harder than the last. Fires reignite in his wake, drawn toward him by invisible forces. Back underground, containment alarms wail as systems overload one by one. "Power levels are off the chart," a technician screams. "We can't control it." The Monarch commander stares at the core, realization settling in with icy clarity. They didn't build a shield. They didn't build a sword. They built a challenge, one loud enough to wake a king. And against every order, every warning, every instinct screaming to stop, the project reaches full activation. Deep beneath the war zone, the false enemy announces itself to the world. Godzilla roars in answer. And now, there is no turning back. The first Joint Command order goes out while the smoke is still rising. Encrypted channels flicker to life across bunkers, carriers, mobile command trucks, frequencies that have spent years jamming each other now forced open by desperation. Flags are stripped from displays. Rank insignia mean less than proximity to a working radio. "Forget borders," a weary voice says over the channel. "If it moves people, it's in." On the ground, soldiers who were shooting at each other hours ago now pull civilians from collapsed buildings together. One man in desert camouflage braces a concrete slab, while another, his uniform marked by a different language, drags a trapped child free. Neither speaks. They don't need to. Above them, transport helicopters thunder low through smoke-choked skies, their rotors slicing through ash. Cargo planes land on broken runways lit by emergency flares taking off overloaded, engines screaming as they claw for altitude. Hospital ships alter course mid-ocean. Trains are diverted, highways reversed, cities emptied block by block. Inside a Monarch mobile command center, maps overlap in frantic layers, evacuation routes, population densities, seismic projections. Dr. Andrews stands at the center, eyes bloodshot, fingers flying across a tablet. "We can't stop him," she says quietly. "Not like this. The best we can do is buy time." A general stiffens. Time for what? She hesitates, then answers honestly. Time for people to get out of his way. Outside, Godzilla moves again. His massive form emerges from the storm like a walking horizon. Every step sends ripples through the ground, cracking roads, toppling what's left of structures already weakened by war. His wounded side steams violently, the glow beneath his scales pulsing irregularly, but his pace does not slow. Artillery batteries reposition not to attack, but to distract. Shells thunder against the ground ahead of him, controlled detonations designed to draw his attention, to herd rather than confront. Fighter jets scream overhead, dumping flares and sonic bursts at calculated distances. Godzilla barely reacts. His focus has narrowed. A Monarch technician freezes mid-sentence, staring at the latest trajectory update. "That's not the battlefield," she says. Dr. Andrews steps closer, her jaw tightens. "That's a city." The coalition accelerates. Sirens wail across urban districts as evacuation orders echo from drones and loudspeakers. Streets choke with fleeing vehicles. Some people abandon cars altogether, running with whatever they can carry. Parents hold children so tightly it hurts. Elderly men refuse to leave until strangers lift them bodily into trucks. A soldier pauses to help a woman struggling with a suitcase. She looks up at him, eyes wide. Are we safe? He doesn't lie. We're trying. Bridges are reinforced with emergency trusses, then demolished moments later once the last convoy crosses. Rail lines are rerouted, then shut down. Every decision costs someone something. In the sky, a mixed squadron of jets forms up, different designs, different markings, flying in uneasy harmony. Their mission isn't victory. It's delay. They streak past Godzilla's head, breaking the sound barrier in a coordinated wave. The sonic boom slams into him like a physical force. He snarls, head snapping upward, tail swinging and flattening a block of abandoned housing. It works. Barely. He veers a few degrees off course. Commanders seize the moment. Push evac routes south now. You've got maybe 20 minutes. Inside the city, a scientist in a monarch vest stumbles as the ground shudders beneath her. She steadies herself against a wall, watching people stream past. Her comm crackles. Seismic readings are spiking, someone says. He's close. She looks up just as Godzilla's silhouette looms through the smoke at the city's edge, dwarfing the skyline. Windows shatter in waves, power grids fail, plunging entire districts into darkness. For a moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath. Godzilla stops. He lifts his head, nostrils flaring as if tasting the air. His dorsal plates dim slightly, then stabilize. He turns. Not toward the heaviest fire, not toward the machines scrambling to slow him, but directly toward the heart of the population center. In the command center, every screen updates at once. A new path, straight through millions of lives. Dr. Andrews closes her eyes for a single devastating second. Then she opens them. He's not chasing us anymore, she says. He's chosen. And somewhere in the darkened city ahead, the ground begins to tremble anew. The city begins to break before Godzilla ever reaches it. Glass fractures in a rolling cascade, windows spiderwebbing and bursting outward as his footfalls send seismic waves through bedrock and steel alike. Power substations overload in sequence, plunging neighborhoods into darkness one grid at a time. Traffic lights die mid-cycle. Elevators freeze between floors. The infrastructure, never designed to endure a living mass of this magnitude, fails under the strain of proximity alone. In the streets, evacuation turns chaotic. A bus stalls as the asphalt beneath it buckles, tires sinking into cracks that widen like wounds. People spill out, coughing in the dust, some running, others frozen in place, staring at the impossible silhouette advancing through smoke and rain. Godzilla's shape is half obscured by storm clouds, but his scale is unmistakable. Buildings barely reach his knees. Inside a hospital, emergency lights flicker as generators strain. Nurses wheel patients down stairwells because the elevators are dead. A doctor pauses to steady an IV bag, hands trembling despite years of training. "Move," she whispers. "Please move." Outside, a bridge collapses, not from impact but resonance. The supports vibrate themselves apart as Godzilla passes nearby, the structure screaming before it gives way. The convoy screeches to a halt just short of the gap. Drivers stare at the sudden void, realizing how thin the margin was. Some don't make it. A father pounds on the side of an armored transport already overloaded, shouting his daughter's name as the vehicle pulls away under orders it can't disobey. A firefighter is knocked off his feet as a building slumps sideways, the ground rolling like a wave beneath him. He doesn't scream, there's no time. High above, Monarch drones struggle to maintain stability, their sensors overloaded by electromagnetic interference radiating from Godzilla's body. Data pours in regardless, structural stress maps lighting up red across the city. Doctor. Andrews watches it unfold from the mobile command center, jaw clenched so tightly it aches. He's not attacking, she says, voice hollow. This is collateral by existence. Godzilla moves through the outskirts like a slow, unstoppable tide. His massive tail clips a skyscraper, not enough to shatter it outright, but enough to compromise its core. Seconds later, the building folds inward, collapsing under its own weight. The sound is distant, thunderous, final. The Titan pauses near the city center. For a heartbeat, everything goes quiet. No gunfire, no engines, just wind and rain and the low, seismic hum of something ancient breathing. Godzilla lowers his head, eyes glowing faintly, as if listening to frequencies no human instrument can fully capture. Monarch's instruments spike anyway. Radiation levels are rising, a technician says, localized but intense. Godzilla exhales a deep, resonant sound that rattles windows miles away. He doesn't fire his atomic breath. He doesn't roar in challenge. He simply stands. And the city continues to fail around him. Underground tunnels flood as pressure changes, rupture seals. Fiber optic lines snap, cutting communications mid-sentence. A data center overheats and goes dark, taking entire networks with it. Civilization peels back layer by layer, fragile when confronted by something that rewrites physical rules by standing still. Evacuation commanders make impossible calls. Entire districts are written off to save others. Routes are abandoned mid-use when the ground becomes too unstable. Helicopters pull away from rooftops, with people still waving below, not because they won't, but because they can't hover any longer in the turbulent air. In the command center, a Monarch analyst stiffens, staring at the separate feed. Dr. Andrews? She says carefully. I'm getting anomalous readings. Andrews turns. From where? The analyst swallows. Not here, somewhere else. A new map overlays the city, global this time. A distant region pulses faintly, then brighter, seismic indicators blooming like a bruise beneath the earth. Another technician leans in, disbelief etched across his face. That signature, it's consistent with Titan-class activity? No, Andrew says softly, it's not consistent. She studies the data, fingers hovering over the screen, her voice drops. It's responding. Outside, Godzilla finally moves again, turning his head slightly, as if acknowledging a call only he can hear. His dorsal plates dim, then pulse once. Slow, deliberate. In the ruined city behind him, fires burn unchecked. Sirens fade one by one, survivors huddle in the dark, alive but forever changed. Inside Monarch Command, the room fills with a new, colder silence. Another Titan is waking. And this time, Godzilla isn't the only one listening. The warning alarms begin before anyone understands what they mean. In Monarch's command center, screens flare red as seismic graphs spike out of scale, their lines trembling violently before stabilizing at levels no natural event should reach. The room fills with overlapping voices, technicians calling out numbers, analysts scrambling to recalibrate instruments that weren't designed to read something this immense. It's not an aftershock, someone says too quickly. It's coordinated. Dr. Andrews steps closer to the main display. Her reflection stares back at her from the glass, eyes ringed with exhaustion, jaw tight with dread. Location? A map resolves. far from the ruined city, far enough that evacuation won't matter, close enough that distance is meaningless. The air pressure in the room seems to drop as the realization spreads. This makes two, a senior analyst says quietly. Outside, the sky above the devastated city churns with unnatural weather. Low clouds spiral inward, drawn by forces they don't understand. Wind sweeps through empty streets, carrying ash and dust in ghostly sheets. Fires burn where no one remains to fight them. Godzilla stands at the city's edge, half silhouetted against the storm. His massive chest rises and falls, steam venting from his jaws with each breath. He is still, but no longer passive. His head lifts. The glow in his eyes intensifies, not with rage, but focus. Ancient instinct awakens fully now, layers of purpose surfacing beneath the Titan's scarred hide. He turns his body away from the city, each step deliberate, the ground cracking beneath his weight. Monarch's sensors scream as his internal radiation signature shifts. "He's reacting," a technician says, "actively." On a distant coastline thousands of miles away, the ocean begins to boil. Water pulls inward, forming a vast depression as something massive displaces the deep. Ice fractures, rock shears apart. The planet itself seems to tense, as if bracing for impact. Back in the command center, Andrews watches a split-screen feed. Godzilla on one side, the new anomaly on the other. Their signatures begin to resonate, frequencies rising in parallel like two massive engines revving toward collision. "They're aware of each other," she whispers. A military liaison clenches his fists. Can they coexist? No one answers at first. Then Andrews shakes her head slowly. "This isn't about territory. This is dominance, balance." She exhales, and balance means conflict. Godzilla releases a low, thunderous growl that rolls across the land, vibrating through collapsed buildings and empty valleys alike. It is not a roar meant for humans. It is a challenge, ancient, unmistakable. Far away, something answers. The sound doesn't travel through air, it comes through the ground, through the ocean, through instruments that overload trying to capture it. A hostile resonance, sharp and discordant, sending a shiver through everyone watching. Technicians recoil as screens flicker, static tearing through the feeds. One monitor cracks outright, the glass fracturing from vibration alone. "That response," an analyst says, voice barely steady, "it's aggressive." Godzilla's dorsal plates begin to glow again, brighter this time, the light bleeding through smoke and rain. He shifts his stance, tail dragging a trench through concrete as he squares his massive shoulders. This is not preparation for destruction. This is preparation for war. In the city behind him, the last evacuation aircraft lifts off, rotors screaming as it clears unstable airspace. Below, survivors watch the Titan's back recede into the storm, unaware that the danger they escaped is only half of what's coming. In Monarch Command, a junior scientist stares at the data, whispering to no one in particular. "There isn't room for this many." Andrews hears him. She doesn't correct him. The truth settles over the room like a weight. The planet hasn't grown smaller, but humanity has. Reduced to spectators on a world suddenly governed by forces that predate cities, borders, and wars, Godzilla takes another step forward, then another, leaving the ruined war zone behind. Each footfall echoes with purpose, a march toward an inevitable convergence. On the global map, the second Titan's signal surges, unstable, hostile, accelerating. Two ancient powers are moving toward each other, and the world between them is far too small to survive what comes next. The ground detonates upward as something massive breaches the surface. Stone and fire hurled skyward in a shockwave that flattens what little remained of the former war zone. Satellites scrambled to reorient as thermal blooms erupted across their feeds. From orbit, the land below looks like a fresh wound torn open. Godzilla arrives first. He emerges through smoke and ash, his silhouette carved in nuclear glow, dorsal plates blazing like a spine of molten steel. Each step he takes reshapes the battlefield, craters collapsing into larger craters, wreckage ground to dust beneath his weight. He stops at the center of the ruined expanse, tail low, head raised. He waits. The rival Titan answers with violence. The earth splits apart as the creature rises, vast, armored, wrong. Its form is jagged and asymmetrical, grown for destruction rather than balance. Plates scrape together as it lifts itself free, shedding debris like scales. Its roar is sharper than Godzilla's, piercing, predatory, filled with challenge. The sound slams into Godzilla like a physical force. He roars back. The collision is immediate. They meet with a force that eclipses artillery. Godzilla charges, shoulder first, slamming into the rival Titan's torso. The impact sends both giants skidding through the remains of a city block, pulverizing concrete and steel into airborne clouds. Shockwaves ripple outward, collapsing structures miles away that had somehow survived until now. The rival Titan recovers first, lashing out with bladed limbs that rake across Godzilla's chest. Sparks and fragments of glowing scale fly free. Godzilla snarls, not in pain but fury, and clamps his jaws around the creature's neck, driving it backward into a shattered industrial complex. From the air, Monarch drones are torn apart by turbulence alone. Pilots, watching from extreme distance, feel their aircraft shudder as pressure waves roll through the atmosphere. "They're not fighting for territory," a Monarch analyst mutters, voice barely audible over the chaos flooding the feeds. "They're fighting for dominance." The rival Titan breaks free, slamming Godzilla with a concussive burst of energy that ripples through the ground like a seismic weapon. Godzilla stumbles, digging his claws into the earth to keep his footing. His dorsal plates dim briefly, then surge brighter than before. Blue-white light crawls up his spine. The rival Titan senses it and charges, trying to close the distance. Too late. Godzilla unleashes his atomic breath. The beam tears across the battlefield, carving a molten trench through the ruins and striking the rival Titan squarely in the chest. Armor glows red-hot, then white, then fails. The creature screams, a sound that fractures stone and overloads sensors, yet it keeps coming, burning, enraged, refusing to fall. It slams into Godzilla again, driving both Titans through what remains of a command bunker. The structure collapses around them, burying the clash beneath tons of debris that instantly vaporize from the heat. They rise again, locked together. Claws tear, teeth bite, tails whip through the air like wrecking balls. The sky darkens as ash and debris climb into the upper atmosphere, blotting out the sun. Lightning dances through the clouds, drawn to the charged air around the combatants. Godzilla takes a brutal blow to the side of his head, staggering him for a moment, a single terrifying moment. It looks like he might fall. Then he plants his feet. He roars, a sound that carries resolve, ancient authority, and absolute refusal. His dorsal plates flare to their brightest yet, light bleeding into the clouds above. He fires again, sustained, focused, the beam pinning the rival Titan in place. The creature thrashes, claws digging furrows into the ground, but the energy overwhelms it. Its roar falters, its movements slow. With a final surge, Godzilla charges through the beam, slamming his full mass into the rival Titan and driving it down. The ground collapses beneath them as the defeated Titan crashes into the earth, its body shuddering violently before going still. Silence follows, broken only by the crackle of fires and the distant rumble of settling terrain. Godzilla stands over the fallen titan, chest heaving, steam pouring from his jaws. He looks down at his opponent, eyes burning, then throws his head back and roars, a declaration heard across continents. From orbit, the battlefield is unrecognizable. A scorched scar mars the planet's surface, glowing faintly where the ground has been vitrified by unimaginable heat. In Monarch Command, no one cheers. One Titan lies dead, but the instruments don't stabilize. Instead, new readings begin to flicker across the screens. Subtle shifts, emerging patterns, disturbances spreading outward from the battle site. And as Godzilla turns away from the fallen body, his glow dimming but not fading, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The balance has been broken, and the world has just learned the cost. The idea is spoken aloud only once, and the room goes silent the moment it lands. Rain lashes the sides of Monarch's forward command complex, the storm outside still charged with residual radiation from the Titan battle. Emergency lights hum overhead. Maps of the scorched war zone flicker across holographic displays, the land forever altered still warm from godly violence. Dr. Andrews stands at the center, hands braced against the table, eyes fixed on Godzilla's last known trajectory as he moves slowly away from the battlefield and towards the open ocean. "We can't kill him," she says. "We've proven that." No one argues. A younger scientist steps forward, voice tight but steady. "But we can guide him." The display shifts, a model appears, controlled energy emissions, tuned to the same frequency Monarch has been tracking since Godzilla first awakened. Artificial but familiar, powerful enough to draw attention, dangerous enough to risk everything. The room erupts. "That's baiting a god," a military commander snaps. "If this goes wrong—" "It already has," Andrews cuts in. Her voice doesn't rise, it doesn't need to. "Cities are gone, borders are meaningless. We don't get clean options anymore." Silence returns, heavier than before. The plan is simple in theory and catastrophic in practice. Deploy a mobile energy array far from population centers, strong enough to mimic a Titan-class signature. Let Godzilla follow it. Lead him away from humanity's last strongholds. Keep him moving, forever if possible. "And if he doesn't follow?" someone asks. Andrews looks at the projection of the glowing Titan, massive and unknowable. Then we learn something worse. Hours later, the array is activated. Deep in the ocean, the device hums to life, its glow bleeding through black water like a false star. Power readings spike immediately, instruments straining as the signal blooms outward, pulsing in a rhythm pulled straight from Monarch's darkest files. On the surface, waves begin to swell. Godzilla stops. He stands at the edge of the sea, his massive form silhouetted against a burning horizon where clouds still glow faintly from the recent battle. Steam rises from his scars, his breathing slows, deep and measured. The signal reaches him. For a moment, nothing happens. In Monarch Command, every eye is locked on the feed. Hands hover over abort controls no one believes will matter. Then Godzilla turns his head. Not sharply, not in anger, with focus. His eyes narrow slightly, the glow within them shifting, not brighter, not dimmer, but attentive. The dorsal plates along his spine emit a low, steady light, sinking, not overpowering, the artificial pulse. He recognizes it, the young scientist whispers, disbelief cracking her voice. Godzilla takes a step toward the ocean. Another. The water surges around his legs as he wades in, the sea reacting like a living thing, disturbed by royalty. But he doesn't rush. He doesn't roar. He watches the distant glow beneath the waves, ancient mind weighing intention against instinct. From orbit, satellites capture the impossible image, the king of the monsters standing still, considering humanity's signal. In the command center, Andrews exhales a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "He knows it's not real," she says quietly. A pause. "Then why is he moving?" someone asks. On the feed, Godzilla lowers his head slightly, almost imperceptibly. The gesture sends a shiver through everyone watching. Recognition. Not as prey, not as threat, as communication. Godzilla steps fully into the ocean, the water climbing his massive frame as he follows the signal's direction. Each movement sends rolling waves toward distant shores, but his path is deliberate, controlled. The array trembles under the strain as Godzilla draws closer, its system screaming as power output climbs beyond safe limits. Engineers beg for shutdown authorization. "Hold," Andrews says, "not yet." Godzilla dives. The sea closes over him, a vast displacement sending shockwaves across the surface. For a terrifying second, the signal spikes wildly, then stabilizes. The Titan is following. Cheers don't come. Relief doesn't either. What fills the room instead is something heavier, awe laced with fear. Because Godzilla didn't chase the signal like an animal. He chose it. And as the ocean settles and the feeds adjust to track his descent, one truth becomes unavoidable. Humanity didn't trick a god. It asked one for mercy, and it has no idea what that answer will ultimately cost. The first target falls before anyone realizes it's intentional. The coastal missile complex abandoned hours earlier erupts in fire as Godzilla's atomic breath slices clean through its reinforced silos. The blast is precise, almost surgical, the beam lingering just long enough to ensure nothing remains but molten steel and collapsing concrete. He doesn't roar. He doesn't linger. He moves on. From the air, Monarch drones track his path with growing unease. Godzilla isn't advancing randomly. He's following a line, one that traces radar installations, artillery emplacements, naval yards, air bases, the skeletal remains of humanity's war-making machinery. "He's not hunting people," a Monarch analyst says, staring at the pattern forming on the map. "He's dismantling capacity." On the ground, soldiers who failed to evacuate watch from cover as Godzilla passes within kilometers of their position. Tanks sit idle, crews frozen inside, weapons trained but unfired. Godzilla doesn't acknowledge them. His gaze never drops to individual lives. Instead, he turns toward a towering command facility, once the nerve center of the war zone. The structure fires everything it has left. Anti-air batteries spit defiance into the sky. Missiles streak toward Godzilla's chest, detonating against his scales in flashes of useless light. Smoke curls around his frame. When it clears, he is still walking. Godzilla stops in front of the facility. For a moment, the world seems to hold its breath. Then he exhales atomic fire, not in a sweeping arc, but a narrow, focused beam that punches straight through the building's core. Floors collapse inward. Antennas shear off and tumble. The command center implodes, burying its servers, war rooms, and screens beneath a mountain of rubble. No civilians were inside. Godzilla turns away without looking back. In Monarch command, silence reigns as the implication settles. "He understands us," Dr. Andrews says softly. "Our symbols, our threats." Outside, the storm clouds begin to thin, revealing a bruised sky streaked with ash and fading light. Godzilla wades through a ruined naval yard, crushing dry docks and warships alike. Steel hulls fold under his weight, cranes snap like twigs, collapsing into the water with thunderous splashes. Yet nearby coastal towns remain untouched. People watch from hills and distant shorelines as the Titan passes, tears streaking faces lit by fire and reflection. Some drop to their knees, not in worship, but in instinctive surrender to something far beyond them. Godzilla reaches the edge of the continental shelf. The ocean churns violently around him, waves slamming against his legs as if reluctant to let him go. He pauses once more, towering against the horizon. Dorsal plates dimmer now. Their glow a fading echo of earlier fury. Satellites capture the moment. The king of the monsters standing amid wreckage, having passed judgment without extermination. He could have ended us, a military liaison whispers. He chose not to. Godzilla steps forward, submerging himself slowly. Water climbs his massive form, swallowing scars and steam alike. With each step, the sea grows more unstable, currents twisting, pressure dropping in irregular patterns that spread outward far beyond his path. Monarch's oceanic sensors flare it with warnings. "That's not normal wake turbulence," a technician says, fingers flying across controls. "The deep currents are destabilizing." On the surface, ships hundreds of miles away report rogue waves and sudden swells. Sonar arrays pick up distant movements, massive, indistinct shapes shifting in response to something old and powerful, returning to their domain. Godzilla disappears beneath the waves, his glow vanishing into the dark. For a brief, fragile moment, the world dares to believe it's over. Then the ocean roars, not with one voice, but many. In Monarch Command, new alerts cascade across the screens, red indicators blooming across vast stretches of ocean. Patterns emerge, migration routes disrupted, abyssal zones awakening, deep-sea pressures fluctuating wildly. Andrew stares at the data, dread tightening her chest. "He didn't just leave," she says. "He reminded the world who rules it." The last image on the main screen is of the empty horizon, waves crashing against ruined shores under a clearing sky. Godzilla is retreating, but the oceans, ancient, vast, and suddenly stirred, are anything but calm. Something has changed down there, and it's still moving. Ash still falls days after the fighting ends. It drifts across the dead zone in slow, quiet sheets, settling over twisted steel, vitrified earth, and the skeletal remains of cities that no longer exist on any evacuation map. The air hums faintly with residual radiation, not enough to kill instantly, but enough to make the land unlivable. Warning beacons flash along a perimeter. No one crosses anymore. The war zone has a new designation. Titan territory. From a high-altitude surveillance craft, the devastation stretches beyond the horizon. What was once a contested region, bristling with armor, industry, and ambition, is now a scar burned into the planet. Rivers have changed course, coastlines have collapsed inward. The ground itself bears the imprint of Godzilla's passage, each crater a reminder that survival came at a price no nation can fully pay. Below, cleanup teams stop miles short of the inner zone. They don't enter, they mark, they observe, they retreat. Inside a global emergency summit, leaders sit under harsh white light, faces hollowed by exhaustion and disbelief. Stock markets have already begun their freefall. Shipping routes are severed. Energy grids rerouted through unstable alternatives. Entire economies were built on infrastructure that no longer exists. "This isn't a recovery," one delegate mutters. "It's a retreat from history." Arguments erupt over responsibility, borders, reparations, voices raised, fingers pointed. But the anger rings thin. Everyone in the room knows the truth, even if no one wants to say it aloud. None of this mattered to Godzilla. Monarch's presence looms over the proceedings like a shadow. Dr. Andrews stands apart, watching the world fracture in quieter ways. She sees it in the way officials avoid the Titan data feeds now, as if ignoring them might shrink their meaning. Outside, refugees filled temporary cities that stretch for miles, endless rows of shelters under grey skies. Children stare at the horizon where the war zone lies, their memories already shaped by fire and giants. Aid drones buzz overhead, delivering rations, water, silence. In one camp, a soldier removes his insignia and drops it into the dirt. No ceremony, no audience, just a small personal surrender. The night sky above the abandoned zone is unnaturally clear. With no cities left to glow, the stars burn cold and sharp. Automated sensors blink in the darkness, scanning for movement that no longer comes from land. But the oceans tell a different story. Monarch's deep-sea monitoring stations report irregular patterns, currents flowing against established models, pressure waves pulsing through trenches long thought dormant. Whales breach in unfamiliar regions. Submersibles lose contact briefly, then return with corrupted data. It's not seismic, a technician says during a late-night watch. It's biological. Andrews leans over his shoulder, eyes narrowing as a familiar frequency appears faintly on the screen. Not Godzilla. Not quite. Mark it, she says. Low priority, but constant. Across the world, governments announce new doctrines, new treaties, new rules of engagement that all hinge on one unspoken clause. If the Titans return, humanity yields. Satellites continue to track the scorched battlefield from orbit. From that height, the destruction looks almost peaceful, a dark, silent expanse where nothing moves. Then, far beneath the ocean surface, something shifts. A ripple passes through a trench deeper than any human city. Sediment clouds rise slowly, disturbed by mass moving where mass should not. Sensors register a pressure change, small, localized, but unmistakable. Another stir. In Monarch Command, an alert pings softly, almost politely, as if unsure it deserves attention. A junior analyst looks up, frowns, then recalibrates. The reading persists. He swallows. Dr. Andrews, I think we're seeing a response. She closes her eyes for just a second before opening them again. To what? The analyst doesn't answer right away. He magnifies the feed, overlays old data, cross-references patterns from the Titan battle. To absence, he finally says. Far below the waves, something ancient reacts to the vacuum Godzilla left behind. Not an attack, not an awakening, a testing of the dark. The war zone remains silent under the stars, abandoned and forbidden. Humanity struggles to rebuild on the edges of a world suddenly much larger and far less forgiving than it believed. And in the deep, where light has never reached, something stirs again, slowly, patiently, listening. The map no longer makes sense. In a dimly lit situation room, a holographic globe rotates slowly, its familiar lines warped by glowing exclusion zones that pulse across continents and oceans alike. Borders fade beneath translucent red overlays, marked with a single designation. Titan-influenced territory. No one argues about jurisdiction anymore. A senior diplomat points at the display, his finger hovering over a coastline that no longer exists. That shipping lane carried 30% of global trade, he says. Now it's a dead zone. And it will remain one, Dr. Andrews replies from the opposite side of the table. Her voice is steady, but her eyes betray the weight she carries. Godzilla doesn't respect economic corridors, he responds to balance. Outside the room, reporters gather behind reinforced glass, their voices a muted storm of questions no one can answer honestly. Markets have stabilized into something colder than panic. acceptance. Nations rewrite treaties overnight, not with neighbors in mind, but with creatures that reshape geography by moving through it. Military installations near coastlines are quietly abandoned. Naval fleets disperse into deeper waters, avoiding known Titan paths, like migrating animals avoiding predators. New maps circulate, classified, constantly updated, tracking where humanity can exist safely and where it cannot. In Monarch headquarters, the tone is grimly pragmatic. This isn't a temporary crisis, Andrews says to the assembled analysts and commanders. This is a new era. On a massive screen, oceanic data streams flow in real time, currents bending, temperatures shifting, abyssal pressures rising and falling in patterns that suggest intelligence rather than randomness. We believe Titans were anomalies, she continues. They're not. They're regulators. And we've spent centuries pretending the planet didn't have a final authority. A younger analyst hesitates before speaking. If that's true, then Godzilla isn't the exception. Andrews meets his eyes. He's the standard. Far from command centers and summits, fishermen along remote coasts report strange sightings, massive wakes passing beneath their boats without breaking the surface, sonar returning echoes too large to categorize. Whales alter their migration routes en masse, fleeing regions they've traversed for millennia. In one instance, a research vessel loses power entirely as something vast moves beneath it, unseen but unmistakable. The crew stands frozen on deck as the ocean swells, then settles, leaving them shaken and silent. Monarch receives the data within hours. They're converging, a technician says, highlighting multiple movement patterns beneath the waves, not aggressively, but deliberately. Godzilla's signal reappears on the far edge of the Pacific, faint but steady. He moves with purpose now, not towards humanity, but along deep ocean corridors no satellite can fully penetrate. The sea around him is alive with motion. And then another signal. Close, too close. At first it's dismissed as interference. Then the pattern resolves, distinct and massive, pacing Godzilla at a distance measured, not in miles, but in instinct. Andrews feels her breath catch. Bring it up. The screen splits. Two colossal signatures glide through the darkness below, parallel paths cutting through the abyss. One burns familiar, ancient, controlled. The other is new. Different frequency, different rhythm, but undeniably Titan. In the silence that follows, the implications unfold with terrifying clarity. Godzilla is not hunting it, not driving it away. He is tolerating it. On the surface, the ocean remains deceptively calm. Sunlight glinting off waves that conceal movements capable of ending civilizations. Cargo ships alter course without explanation. Flights are rerouted. Humanity adapts step by cautious step to a world where the sea itself has tiers of ownership. A world order meeting adjourns early. There's nothing left to negotiate. That night, Andrew stands alone in Monarch's observation deck, watching live feeds of the open ocean. Her reflection stares back at her, small and fragile against the vastness behind the glass. We wanted control, she murmurs. We got coexistence. An alert chimes softly. A third faint signal flickers at the edge of the detection, far deeper than the others, stirring slowly, as if waking from a long, patient sleep. The oceans shift, currents realigning to accommodate more than one king. Godzilla moves on, no longer solitary in his domain. And humanity, for the first time, understands the truth it has avoided since the beginning. This planet was never theirs alone. The age of Titans has begun. The ocean convulses without warning. A naval task force scattered across the Pacific feels it first, not as a wave but as pressure. Instruments spike, hulls groan, sonar screens wash white as something impossibly vast moves beneath them. Not fast, not aggressive, but undeniable. "Cut engines," a captain orders, voice tight. "All ships, dead stop." One by one, the war machines of humanity fall silent. Below them, the water glows. Godzilla rises just enough for his dorsal plates to break the surface, each jagged spine burning with the deep, controlled blue. The sea around him churns into a slow, circular current, as if the ocean itself is bowing. There is no roar, no challenge. He doesn't need to announce himself anymore, and every system aboard the ship screams warnings, reactors destabilizing, guidance systems failing, weapons locking themselves out as if refusing to function in his presence. On the bridge, a young officer grips the railing, knuckles white. "We didn't provoke him," she whispers. "We stayed clear." "That's why we're still alive," the captain replies. Godzilla turns, massive head angling just enough for one ancient eye to breach the surface. It doesn't focus on any single ship. It surveys the fleet as a concept: metal, intent, history. Then, with deliberate slowness, he sinks back beneath the waves. The pressure eases, systems reboot, breath returns. The message is unmistakable. Across the world, similar moments unfold. Submarines retreat from patrol routes they've held for decades. Deep-sea drilling platforms are dismantled and abandoned, their crews evacuated, as seismic readings spike in warning rather than catastrophe. Humanity learns, painfully and quickly, that the ocean is no longer an exploitable frontier. It is sovereign territory. At Monarch, restraint becomes doctrine. Dr. Andrews stands before a wall of real-time oceanic projections. Godzilla's path traced not by destruction, but by absence. Areas where storms dissipate unnaturally, where rogue waves flatten into glass, where other Titan signals fall silent or divert. "He's not conquering," an analyst says. "He's enforcing." "And he's winning," Andrews replies. A proposal to deploy experimental deterrence is quietly shelved. Another to resume deep-sea weapons testing is erased entirely. For the first time in modern history, global militaries agree on something without argument. Do not challenge the king. In coastal cities, people adapt in small human ways. New warning sirens are installed, not for attacks, but for proximity. Children are taught Titan drills alongside fire drills. Fishermen learn to read new patterns in the water, passing knowledge like folklore. If the birds flee inland, if the waves flatten too suddenly, leave everything behind. Respect becomes survival. Godzilla is felt more often than he is seen. A shadow beneath a moonlit swell, a tremor through harbour pilings, the distant glow of dorsal plates miles offshore, like a moving constellation beneath the sea, and always calm in his wake. One night, a storm system forming near a major coastal capital simply unravels. Satellites record a massive shape passing beneath the storm's core, dispersing it with nothing more than movement. No heat, no blast. Controlled through presence alone. On an observation platform at the edge of Titan territory, Andrews watches the horizon through reinforced glass. The sea is quiet. Too quiet. "He's teaching us," she says softly to no one in particular. "The way predators teach prey. The rules." The technician approaches, uneasy. "We've lost the signal." Andrews turns. "Interference?" "No," he says. "Total absence." Screens confirm it. Godzilla's bioacoustic signature, once a constant, low-frequency heartbeat across the oceans, has vanished. No retreat vector. No fade, just gone. Hours pass, then days. Shipping cautiously resumes in limited corridors, every vessel tense, waiting for correction. It never comes. The ocean remains still, almost reverent. Too reverent. Monarch analysts grow uneasy. Silence, they know, is not peace. It's patience. Deep beneath the surface, where light has never reached, something ancient settles into darkness. Godzilla descends beyond tracking, beyond sonar, beyond human reach. Not in defeat, not in rest. In watchfulness. The king has withdrawn his shadow, leaving humanity alone, with the weight of what it has learned. And the silence he leaves behind is louder than any roar. The warning sirens don't signal an attack. They signal presence. Along the rebuilt coastline, lights dim automatically as the sea begins to glow. Not violently, not suddenly, but with a slow, deliberate radiance that rolls beneath the waves like a living horizon. Civilians stop mid-step, conversations die. Even the wind seems to hesitate. Godzilla has returned to the surface. Not in wrath. In patrol. He moves parallel to the shore, massive bulk cutting through the water with a steadiness that defies his size. Dorsal plates pulse faintly, not charged for combat, but alive. An ever-burning reminder that peace here is conditional. On a reinforced observation deck, Monarch personnel watch in silence. No one gives orders. No one needs to. "He's closer than last time," someone murmurs. Dr. Andrews doesn't respond. Her eyes trace the rippling water, the subtle displacement of tides bending around a shape that has rewritten every definition of power humanity ever held. Cities beyond the exclusion zone glow behind layers of shielding and policy. New architecture designed not to resist titans, but to avoid provoking them. Skyscrapers are shorter now. Energy signatures cleaner. Military installations buried, disguised, or gone entirely. The world has learned to live quietly. Far inland, children grow up with titans as fact, not myth. Classroom walls display evacuation routes alongside historical timelines. Teachers speak of borders that used to exist, of oceans once mapped and owned. Now, geography answers to something older. Godzilla pauses offshore. For a long moment, he simply floats, head rising, just enough to break the surface. His eye turns toward the city, not focusing on faces or buildings, but on motion, noise, intent. Every sensor Monarch deploys lights up, yet none can truly measure what's happening in that gaze. Assessment. Judgment. A helicopter drifts too close, its pilot frozen between protocol and instinct. The machine trembles as Godzilla's presence alone disrupts its systems. "Pull back," Andrews says quietly. The pilot doesn't argue. He retreats, heart hammering as Godzilla watches, then looks away. Permission granted. In the deep ocean, other titans stir. Some respond to Godzilla's dominance by retreating, others by testing the boundaries, sending tremors across the sea floor like questions whispered in stone. Monarch tracks them all, not with confidence, but with humility. The balance is fragile, not enforced by treaties or weapons, but by one living constant. At an international summit broadcast across the globe, leaders speak in careful tones. Words like coexistence and adaptation replace control and deterrence. No one mentions victory, no one claims authority, because authority now walks. As night falls, clouds roll in fast and low. Lightning crawls across the sky, reflected in Godzilla's armored hide as he turns away from the shore. Each step into deeper water sends waves outward, ripples that reach beaches miles away, lapping at the feet of those watching from a safe distance. Some kneel, some record, some simply stand, understanding they are witnessing not a monster, but a boundary. Godzilla stops once more, just beyond the continental shelf. His dorsal plates brighten, casting a ghostly blue path across the Black Sea. For a heartbeat, the energy builds, enough to make every military satellite flinch. Then it stabilizes, not a weapon. The signal. Deep below, the oceans answer with subtle movement, currents shifting, pressures equalizing, ancient paths reopening. The planet itself seems to breathe differently in his presence, as if recalibrating around a force it recognizes. Andrews exhales slowly. He's not leaving, she says. He's watching. Godzilla lowers himself into the depths, glow fading inch by inch, until only darkness remains. The sea closes above him, calm as glass. No roar follows. No promise. Just silence. The world resumes its cautious rhythm. Ships move slower. Nations plan smaller. Humanity survives not because it is stronger, but because it finally understands its place. Somewhere far below, the king of the monsters moves through the dark, ancient and patient, a protector only by choice, a threat by nature. Peace exists now, but it exists on his terms. And the world knows, when gods walk the earth, they do not need permission to rule.